Welcome to the Prosperity Podcast.
Prosperity Thinkers, on this episode of the podcast, we're going to be talking about your money mindset reset for 2025. So 2025, that's a big year. We're going to have another announcement of something that's happening in 2025 in another episode. But this is one of those really big years because we're already a quarter through this century. And it doesn't mean that we have to wait until the beginning of the year to set goals or intentions. But since everyone's doing it, and now we're a few weeks into it, let's give a little nudge. How about that, Kim? You took some intentional time, which you do all the time. And so how is it that you have we're going to call two things, a large calibration and then mini calibrations? How do you do it?
Well, calendar control is uber important to me. And I absolutely don't believe in time management. I believe in being very purposeful about how I use my time. And so free days, which I learned from Dan Sullivan over 30 years ago, have always been a very important element. And I love that we're in a business that is not uber busy at the holiday time, because those 2 weeks, not maybe that you necessarily take the entire 2 weeks off, but that period between and around Christmas and New Year's can just be very valuable, unless you're in one of those businesses that's just super focused at that time of year, and then you got to find another 2 weeks. And what those do is bring rest and clarity to what you're doing next. So again, that calendar control, so important. And time blocking has become a conversation point for a lot of people. Super valuable, super helpful. I do it all the time. Absolute calendar control. Blocks of time to be able to do what I'm good at doing. And then other blocks of time to be able to do the 20% of stuff that I have to do that I may not necessarily want to do, but I can do it. And getting those done like first thing in the morning is a trick to make things a little bit easier. Nevertheless, I think as we look at the beginning of 2025, it's funny, during our time away, we actually were at home this entire 2 weeks, and we had a puzzling, like doing a puzzle on a piece of table, on a table effort that a bunch of family members were in. And one of the sort of extended family members asked about New Year's resolutions. And it was interesting because there were basically 3 generations at the table, and nobody really responded. And I asked her what was important to her, and so she brought out some things. And then I thought about it later, and I decided that I think it's daily resolutions. I don't think it has anything to do with a year or even a month. I think it's a day, every day. In fact, we could even break that down to even every hour, or if that's too much, twice a day. Like, I love being very purposeful in the morning and my resolutions for the morning. And then just taking 5 or 10 minutes at the noon hour to step back and be very purposeful about my time for the afternoon. And then I was also thinking about the value of Sunday. So as most people know, especially if you're a biblical reader at all, that Sunday was initially meant to be a day of rest. Now that may have meant from physical effort, and it was meant to be a day of focus on your maker, on Father, Mother, God, on what the universe brings you, like whatever terminology you want to use for Sunday, which of course has been completely obliterated in our society today. And so if you want to have a reset on a Sunday, you have to be very purposeful about it. And the value that can bring your family. We're doing a lot of work in our Prosperity Parents space right now. And the value of taking some purposeful time on Sunday to get ready for the week and have things organized might be food, might be sports equipment, might be calendar control, whatever it is that you need for your family to be organized for the week. Holy cow, does that make that week so much better? So, in my opinion, scrap the new year resolutions and just go for new day.
Okay, I like that. Here's the question. If your day starts to go sideways, how do you get it back on track?
I love that question. I personally do one of three things. I step outside, I do jumping jacks, or, some kind of physical thing, and or I read. Now, I'm a reader. I absolutely love to read. I have since the beginning of time. A lot of people would probably prefer to listen to music. That's great. Or maybe you do something else, but have a thing that you can turn to shift your mindset, shift your breath. I know other people do a breathing exercise that will give you the reset that you need to tackle the problem that's at hand. I got an email the other day that I knew was going to be problematic, and I saw it from the subject line, and I didn't open it, and I waited until I had the right time and the right mental space to do it. It was just a few hours later in the day, yet because I had that reset at lunch, because I was purposeful about opening it, reading it thoroughly, dealing with it all in one space, then I was able to solve the problems that were in the email and be done with it and let it go. And those are also very valuable things, to be able to compartmentalize that issue, solve it, and let it go. And it takes mental discipline to do that.
Absolutely. So you change your environment, you change your state, your body state, and then you're really intentional about how you're doing that. So that's something with the mental reset. What other types of resets are you doing? Because you mentioned you saw an email, you had to get the right state of mind for that. So there's resets that we do. I'm sure listeners would be interested to hear additional resets, things that they can apply.
I think you have to know yourself pretty well in this arena. So, for example, some people reset really well by attending an event. It could be something local, even something simple like a networking club or, business network, international, some type of thing like that. Or it could be getting on a plane and going to a conference. And so if that social element is necessary or important for you to reset, then do that. It's very important that we get very clear on self-knowledge around these arenas, which is not necessarily easy to do. So I have some specific tips on some arenas of self-knowledge that are valuable no matter what age or stage of life you're in, because I also believe that about every 10 years or so, us human beings need to go through what society calls a midlife crisis, where we are forced to step back and really take a look at things to then go forward with purpose and stop falling into the default arena. And again, that can be a daily thing as well, but hopefully not, because that can be a little traumatic and impacts family and sometimes causes geographical changes that are necessary and work alignment and et cetera, et cetera. But it's still good for us to have that occasional massive call to table, I guess, to cause us to really be purposeful in rethinking how we're living our life.
One of the notes that I had for the reset, it talks about visualization. So I put together a bunch of bullet points, okay, ask Kim about this. So do you do visualization when you're visualizing? Yes. Okay, tell us about that. What does that look like to you?
I love the term visioneer and visioneering, and visualization is just in that same space. In fact, sometimes I believe that's more important than goals. So here's how I see the difference. Visualization is looking out in the future and getting clear about something that you want, but understanding that it's a fuzzy clearness. In other words, it may not have all the things that goals have. It may not be specific. It may not be measurable. It may not be achievable. It's a vision, right? It's an ideal, if you will, that you set out there that drives you and is inspirational and provides purpose and leads you forward. That's what visions are. And goals are fine. You can set goals and you can be the SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and with a time frame. Some people really get into that, and that's fine. I used to when I was younger. I don't find they serve me well today. But visioneering or visualize, uber critical. And it comes with a corresponding element when it's easy to fall into visualizing things that we're afraid of, or visualizing things that are going wrong, or visualizing things that could cause derailment, or maybe that we're already in. And like you said, maybe our day's already going sideways and we're visualizing it going actually down the toilet. It's very important that if those types of things pop into your head, that you stop. Now, there are elements of people's work lives that really require that they think through all the quote bad things that can happen. Okay, then do your job. Think through the bad things that can happen. Write them down, document them, buy the insurance, prepare for the thing that might go wrong. Do whatever it is that you need to do to be prepared and protected, and then get that thought off of all those bad things. It's why I talk about the emergency opportunity fund all the time. Mm-hmm. Fund your emergency fund, and then stop talking about it, and stop thinking about it, and stop being focused on it, and switch your vision, switch your mindset, switch your visualizing, literally your eyes, your ears, your brain, to what it is that you want to have happen. We must maintain focus on what we want to have happen, not what we are afraid of.
Oh, I really like that. It reminds me, our family just completed the audiobook of The 4-Hour Work Week. And that's a book that I read like 20 years ago. And I saw it and we wanted to go through it again. And it was cool because my kids got to hear it. And there was one example in there where he says, in certain situations, you want to really visualize what that bad scenario is, that worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Because what happens, if you get some clarity, you realize it's not that big of a deal. It really isn't. And then as you state, then you're done with it. You end it, it's over, that's it. Very well said. As far as a reset, you've set the intention for the day, you set the intentions for the year, you change your environment. One last question. How do you cement your day, those last final moments?
Interesting, like right before I go to bed?
Right before you go to bed.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's very important to go to sleep in gratitude. And I am one of those people that falls asleep fairly quickly most of the time. I usually go to bed at 10:30 at the very latest. And I think that's important, to stay, it doesn't matter what the time is, but to stay consistent, because your body clock starts to acknowledge that. And yet I can get 2 or 3 sentences of gratitude out before I fall asleep. And so I do. And again, I try to up-level that gratitude so that the things that I'm being grateful for are the inspirational things, the spiritual things, those higher level elements of relationship and purpose and service. And that is literally 2 or 3 sentence, I am grateful for, thank you for, fill in the blank space, and then I'm asleep.
That's cool. It's a good way to end it. And thanks for sharing that. Kim, very grateful for you and for this reset. For any of you listeners that had New Year's intentions and things have gone sideways, or maybe you're on track and you need that momentum, this is the episode that will help you out. Kim, thank you for sharing some wisdom with us.
Thank you for listening to the Prosperity Podcast. To take control of your money and have it work for you, visit prosperitythinkers.com.